It all started when we explored the crypts in Maze War. Then we hunted down secret weapons while fighting the demons in Doom. Next we legged it to be the first to grab the lightning gun in Quake. Now we're piling in the Warthog to attack the red base in Halo Combat Evolved. Afterwards we hit on top of the factory structure in Rust to get a vantage point in MW2. Called out enemies behind paint in CSGO, escorted precious cargo down the dusty trails on Route 66 in Overwatch, to now assembling the universe's mightiest heroes to save Yggdrasil in Marvel Rivals. First and third person shooters have come a long way since they've started, and they've only climbed to popularity as the internet became more of a common asset in homes across the world. So much so that there are global competitions that put players' skills to the test to find out who has the best teams and players. But with all these games came so many iconic maps, famous for their layouts, hidden secrets, and iconic landmarks. On today's episode of GameSpeak, I would like to take a deep dive into what makes our favorite shooter maps so special, asking questions like, what are some of the core strategies of designing multiplayer maps? How is player experience taken into consideration with the map's themes and details? And what properties make a map memorable? So let's go ahead and select our favorite loadout so we can dive right in. Before we even start to create our map, we need to learn one of the most famous strategies in level design history, the design of loops. Loops is a layout element that guides players back to a previously visited location. While it is not necessarily a linear path, it does not feel that way to the player. Celia Wagar writes, "In an FPS, your position determines your line of sight to other people. Line of sight is a connection to other players, a capability to attack them. In this way, use of cover is like blocking or dodging in a fighting game. So the ability to block or dodge enemy shots is dependent on level design. In a hallway, you don't have many options for approaching an opponent. There's only one line of sight. To make a level where both people can choose to move around one another and position effectively versus one another, you need to introduce loops." She then goes into comparing the designs of two very famous FPS maps, DDoS 1 and 2. Taking a look at DDoS 2, draw a line along all central paths of the map. As you continue down one path, you are greeted with another route that feeds into another section of the map. As you continue down this new path, you are met with another crossroad that will either take you back to where you were before or another new area until you come full circle. This is one of the best examples of loops in map design. Now let's take a look at DDoS 2's older brother. The concept of loops is still utilized in this map, especially in the three outer sectors. However, the map's primary form of access to these sectors is this middle section here, limiting the amount of player options of exploration and battle scenarios, providing a completely different experience than DDoS 2. The loop's design philosophy is not exclusive to multiplayer. Single-player games use this concept all the time. One of my favorite examples of this is the Gore Nest level from Doom Eternal. The entire map revolves around this grotesque mass of demonic power. The objective of this level is to break inside and destroy the nest at its core. But to do that, you need to locate 3 magic keys. For every key you collect, you wind up back at the Gore Nest to insert it into one of the 3 altars, unlocking more paths to explore to find the next key, giving this circular map a linear experience. Now that we have our foundation, it's time to give our map some flair, adding in some assets for cover, landmarks for familiarity, and plenty of vantage and disadvantage points so players are encouraged to strategize and create drama. But we can't just place whatever we want all willy-nilly. For our map to be considered memorable to our players, it must have a story utilizing thematic locales with corresponding assets to extend that vision to the players. Let's take a look at these notes I've found describing the map Waterworks from Halo 2. At the top of the note page, we can see what game modes were in mind when creating the base layout: Banshee duels, King of the Hill, and different versions of Capture the Flag. Next is our setting, a Forerunner drainage system on Delta Halo with sewer bunkers and a natural steam runoff to a reservoir. Also utilizes tunnels and long sloping pipes. Moving on, we see the map's inspirations and must-have assets and themes to bring the setting to life. This map wants to stick with the Forerunner theme, allow access for all vehicles, and takes inspiration for its size and layout from the map Blood Gulch, another famous map from the first game. Now we get to the meat and potatoes of the map's description. This is a larger than usual Capture the Flag map set inside an enormous natural cave. The ceiling and floor will be covered with stalactites and stalagmites respectively to act as natural cover or obstacles for Banshee dogfights. Since the map is symmetrical, each side will have a similarly designed base, with the primary differences being colors and lighting. Each base will be stocked with various weapons and vehicles to encourage players to form different strategies on how to attack their opponents. Along the sides of the cave will be a series of secret tunnels that players can use to flank or catch intruders off guard. In the center lies a huge Forerunner structure with multiple entrances, giving players various options of of traversing the map. My favorite part of this note sheet is the section where the designers discuss their favorite parts of the map as well as its potential flaws, giving themselves a better idea on what to focus on for the future of this map's development. It's amazing how this one-page document gave me a greater appreciation for this map as I explored it by myself, seeing all of their ideas brought to life for people all over the world to enjoy. Okay, quick recap. We have learned how to make going in circles more engaging to the player, as well as how to design our maps to be thematic. But what is the point of laying this junk everywhere? Well, it's to mess with the player's senses, as well as provide options during PvP interactions. Remember my first GameSpeak video on movement, where we talked about the aspects of good and bad flow, how good flow provides the most comfortable settings for you to interact, whereas bad flow provides you with more risky options? Hashtag clever plug. In a map design perspective, to achieve these versions of flow, we need to look at something called a signal-to-noise ratio. In his article describing his experience with FPS map design, Josh Foreman writes, "I believe the ultimate game being played is one of noise reduction. By noise, I'm referring to inaccessible data or data that is difficult to parse. Or simply put, ambiguity. Humans hate ambiguity, and we have an innate desire to parse ambiguous noise into binary data for faster/easier sorting. We take great satisfaction in resolving mysteries, especially in a competitive environment where we can exploit the resolution for victory. How does this play out in the spatial constraints of a level? By presenting the right amount of signal-to-noise ratio. If there's too much unknown, the player can feel helpless and overwhelmed. Too little unknown, and things become static, a solved game like tic-tac-toe. The level designer needs to spatially present just enough ambiguity at a time so that resolving that ambiguity pulls the player through the gameplay loops in one solved mystery after another." Josh goes on to explain how a player's line of sight is one of the most powerful tools when creating ambiguity in map design. Key elements like information, risks, and rewards should be communicated through the player's line of sight, whether it's through landmarks that point towards the objective, objects that obstruct visibility, or the paths chosen for offense and defense. These factors all contribute to what can be described as noise. In a video attached to this article, Josh walks through one of the maps he designed for CSGO. When discussing the attacking team's potential paths, he highlights two significant landmarks: a tower with a spherical tip and a radar dish. These structures are strategically placed to guide players toward the map's plant sites, dubbed A and B. When heading towards Site B, Josh focuses on the shortest route, codenamed B Short. The appeal of this path lies in its directness. It leads straight to the plant site. However, from the defender's perspective, there are vantage points that allow them to spot attackers before they are seen, thanks to the overhead beams that obscure the attacker's line of sight along the path. Despite this disadvantage, the attackers aren't entirely left in the dark. Peepholes along the entrance of the path can potentially reveal the defender's positions, offering just enough information to help attackers decide whether to commit to B Short or consider the alternate routes B Medium or B Long. Josh goes on to discuss how each path offers different cover layouts, counterplay opportunities, and the associated risks and rewards of these routes, but I won't be diving into those details here. Instead, I encourage you to watch the rest of Josh's video for yourselves. I'll leave a link in the description for anyone interested. And with that, we now have a generalization of what goes into designing maps for multiplayer shooters. First, we lay down our foundation utilizing the style of loops, providing players with various branching paths that make navigation feel linear, but hide clever passageways that guide them to new areas, but will also lead them back to where they were before. Next, we choose our themes and design our maps to have an atmosphere that conveys a story to the player, immersing them into our world. Finally, we take those thematic assets and arrange them to provide ambiguity to those previously mentioned pathways, adding noise to the player's line of sights, showing them the risks and rewards when choosing paths. All of these factors will create numerous battle scenarios that will keep the game from getting boring. And just to add some extra info for you guys, I tried to see if there's any differences when designing maps for third and first person shooters. And honestly, I couldn't find much. There was a few bits around the concept of map scaling due to the difference of camera angles, but really it boils down to character gameplay and the mechanics of designing standalone characters compared to the cookie cutter warrior. I would love to go deeper into this, but it would be a great topic for a different episode. If that's something you would be interested in seeing, leave a comment down below and hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found something interesting about the topics discussed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!